Imagine a force so quiet, so embedded in your daily life, that you hardly notice it's there. Yet it shapes how you think, nudges your desires in subtle directions, and steals your focus moment by moment. It doesn't come with warnings or alarms. Instead, it hides behind the mask of pleasure. It seduces. It whispers that it's harmless, maybe even essential. But behind its allure lies control. This force doesn't just distract you, it rules you, often without your consent. It redefines your wants, reprograms your priorities, and slowly chips away at your peace. It has shattered men who seemed unbreakable. It has brought down civilizations. And still, it wears the face of something innocent: lust. But what if you could break free? What if this wasn't just a struggle to be endured, but a transformation waiting to happen? What if turning away from this force was not repression, but the gateway to a kind of freedom you've never known? This isn't a war against desire itself. Desire is not the enemy. It's part of being human. The message here is about reclaiming your energy, the part of you that's been siphoned off by fantasies and habits that promise everything and deliver nothing. This is about stepping out of the trance. Lust isn't only about sex, it's about escapism. It's the endless pursuit of stimulation, the craving for control, attention, validation. It doesn't nourish, it drains, it doesn't build, it consumes. Through this journey, you'll hear echoes from ancient minds and modern voices, philosophers, psychologists, spiritual leaders, all recognizing the same truth in different ways. When unchecked desire is in control, your reason takes a back seat, and you become a puppet to your impulses. But once you see lust for what it is, not a need, but a distraction, you begin the journey toward mastery. Think of how many times lust pretended to be love, how many times it made you believe that fulfillment was just around the next corner. One more click, one more message, one more moment of indulgence. And then what? A fleeting high followed by a deeper void. How often have you been promised joy but left with guilt, restlessness, or emptiness? Sigmund Freud, the pioneer of psychoanalysis, once argued that our unconscious minds are largely governed by repressed sexual urges, that avoiding or denying these leads to psychological suffering. But his student and eventual challenger, Carl Jung, believed in something even more profound. He proposed that the key is not to suppress these urges, but to understand and integrate them. Jung called this process individuation, the act of becoming your whole self by confronting your hidden motives and shadows. And lust. Lust is one of those shadows. When left in the dark, it controls you. When you bring it to light, it can transform, not into denial, but into wisdom, clarity, creative power. Jung believed that in transforming your base desires, you discover a more complete version of yourself, not ashamed of longing, but no longer ruled by it. Across countless traditions, we find the same theme. Whether it's Christianity speaking of purity of heart, Buddhism identifying craving as the root of suffering, or the Hindu practice of brahmacharya, the sacred preservation of life energy. The message is not about guilt, it's about potential. These teachings weren't meant to stifle human nature. They were roadmaps to clarity, blueprints for freedom. And yet, in our modern world, lust isn't just tolerated, it's monetized. It's embedded into your feed, your advertising, your entertainment. You're not just being entertained, you're being trained to crave, to click, to want more. But no amount of swiping or stimulation ever truly satisfies. You don't feel more alive, you feel more agitated. You're not more connected, you're lonelier. Ask yourself now, honestly, what would your life look like if this force no longer had a grip on you? If your mind was no longer hijacked by seductive thoughts, urges, or compulsions? What have you done or failed to do because you were under the influence of lust? What decisions did you not make? What goals were delayed? What peace was lost because your attention was elsewhere? The ancient Stoics like Marcus Aurelius taught that true strength is found in mastery over the mind, not in submission to every impulse. Marcus wrote that your power lies in your ability to choose how you respond to the world, not in trying to control it. That freedom is internal, and mastery, it starts with awareness. Lust isn't just some animal instinct. It's been elevated, romanticized, and glorified. But underneath all of that, it's a distraction, a misdirection. It tells you that happiness lies outside of you, in a person, an image, an experience. And so, you chase, endlessly. But what you're really after isn't pleasure, it's connection, meaning, peace. When you begin to see that your cravings are not signs of weakness, but signals, when you ask, what am I really hungry for? You begin to shift. You wake up. You realize that your life doesn't need to be spent chasing shadows. You can live rooted in presence. You can reclaim the parts of yourself that were lost in addiction to stimulation. Consider this. What kind of clarity would you have if your mind weren't constantly being hijacked? What kind of creativity could be unlocked if your energy was no longer leaking out through compulsive behavior? How different would your relationships be if they were based on mutual growth and truth, not fantasy, not need, not projection? The modern world profits off your cravings. Entire industries are built to feed your desires while starving your soul. But you don't have to participate. You can choose to step out of the cycle. And remember, this isn't just about sex. It's about the deeper pattern, the constant hunger for more approval, more excitement, more distraction. Lust is simply the clearest mirror of how easily we lose ourselves in the chase for what can never satisfy. To overcome lust is not to become a monk. It is to become present. It is to regain clarity. It is to no longer be swayed by every glittering temptation. And this is not an impossible task. It begins with a pause, a breath, a moment of honesty. When the urge comes, and it will, don't fight it with shame. Sit with it. Ask it questions. What is this really about? What am I trying to numb or avoid? Is this even real, or is it just a conditioned reflex? This is not suppression. This is alchemy. The transformation of compulsive desire into conscious presence. The evolution from reaction to response. And the best part? Once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. Once you taste the peace of being undistracted, you begin to crave that instead. The old highs lose their grip. You start to want different things, real things. You were not made to be a slave to appetite. You were made to choose, and in choosing, you find your power again. In part 2, we'll dig deeper into the science of how lust rewires your brain, how addiction grows in the space of avoidance, and how you can begin to shift those patterns for good. What happens when you no longer react from impulse, but move from intention? Stay with the journey. You're already further than most. Let's go deeper now, beyond philosophy, beyond poetry, and into the mechanics of the mind itself. Because this force we're exploring, this pull of lust, isn't just an emotional or spiritual dilemma. It's neurological. It shapes the very structure of your brain, not through some abstract symbolism, but through direct, physical change. Every time you indulge the craving, you strengthen its hold, not metaphorically, literally. Neuroscience has uncovered what ancient wisdom always knew in spirit, that repeated choices form patterns, and patterns become prisons. Each indulgence in lust, each time you act on compulsion, you fire a neural pathway. Dopamine surges. You feel a rush, a reward, and your brain remembers. It takes notes. It marks that moment as something worth repeating. But here's the trick. The more you repeat it, the less satisfaction it brings. You build tolerance. You need more stimulus for the same feeling. What once felt exciting becomes mundane, and so you chase. More extreme content, more frequent fantasies, more indulgence, but the satisfaction stays just out of reach. Why? Because it was never really about satisfaction. It was about escape. Escape from what? From stillness, from discomfort, from yourself. Dr. Anna Lemke, a professor of psychiatry at Stanford and an expert in addiction, calls this the pleasure-pain balance. In her book Dopamine Nation, she explains how the brain tries to maintain equilibrium. When you flood your reward system, the brain pushes back by dulling your ability to feel pleasure. It doesn't just flatten your response to lust. It numbs your joy, your motivation, even your connection to others. You're not just chasing lust, you're becoming dependent on it. And worse, you're becoming desensitized to everything else. Genuine joy, deep love, presence, they fade into the background. You become restless, foggy, fragmented. And in that state, you're more easily manipulated, more easily marketed to, more easily controlled. That's why breaking free from lust isn't just personal, it's revolutionary. You're not just rewiring your brain, you're taking your mind back from a world designed to distract you. You are reclaiming sovereignty over your inner landscape. And that's a dangerous act, dangerous to the systems that profit off your distraction, and liberating to your soul. So, what does the path out look like? First, it's about slowing down, about reclaiming the pause between stimulus and response. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once said that in that tiny space between what happens to us and how we respond lies our freedom. Lust removes that space. It wants urgency, it wants reaction, it thrives in autopilot. But when you learn to sit with the discomfort, when the craving comes and you don't run, something changes. You begin to reclaim choice. That doesn't mean the urge disappears. It means you are no longer ruled by it. And that is real power. Not the power to suppress, but the power to choose how you engage with your own energy. Carl Jung put it beautifully when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about that. How often have you called a mistake love? How often have you mistaken a habit for personality? When lust is unconscious, it becomes your director. It calls the shots. It picks your partners, your distractions, your decisions. But once you bring it into awareness, you have a choice. You can ask, what am I really after right now? Is this urge pointing to loneliness? Is it a stand-in for affection, for touch, for meaning? What am I trying not to feel? And often, that question alone softens the intensity. Because now, you're not avoiding. You're meeting yourself. Not with shame, with curiosity. Because this isn't about judgment, it's about freedom. And freedom begins with facing what is real. In ancient Greek philosophy, there was a term for the inner battle between what we know is right and what we're tempted to do. They called it akrasia, acting against one's better judgment through weakness of will. Socrates couldn't understand it. Aristotle tried to explain it, but all agreed to act against your own wisdom is to suffer. And lust is often the vehicle of that suffering. It disguises itself as what you want, even when a deeper part of you knows it's not what you need. Let's pull the lens back for a moment. Look not just at yourself, but at the world. What kind of culture do we live in? One that profits from your disconnection, your discomfort, your desire. Advertising is designed to stir craving. Social media to hold your attention hostage. Entertainment floods your senses with dopamine, but offers nothing for your soul. This isn't random, it's strategic. And lust is the easiest hook. It's primal. It bypasses logic. It ignites quickly and clouds judgment just as fast. It creates habits, not reflection. It distracts from purpose. And when a population is distracted, it's easier to control. So when you break this pattern, when you refuse to chase, you're doing more than self-care. You're making a quiet rebellion against a world that thrives on your emptiness. But here's the transformation. When you stop chasing external highs, you begin to notice something else, a different kind of energy. A strength, a quiet clarity. That's your life force returning to you. In Eastern traditions, this energy is known by many names: chi, prana, kundalini. It's not mystical, it's simply your natural vitality, your ability to feel alive, to create, to focus. Lust drains it. Presence restores it. When you no longer waste this energy on fleeting impulses, it begins to build, it starts to rise. And with it comes something few people ever experience in full: peace. This is why spiritual disciplines across cultures emphasized restraint, not out of shame, not out of fear, but because they understood something about human nature. That desire, if mastered, becomes power. But if it's allowed to lead, it becomes poison. Monks, sages, and saints weren't denying life. They were aligning with it. They chose to channel their energy inward, to cultivate depth, not distraction. And when you begin to do the same, in your own way, in your own life, you begin to feel the difference. You become magnetic, grounded, clear. You stop needing, you start offering. Even in relationships, everything changes. You're no longer looking to others to fill your emptiness. You're not projecting fantasy. You're showing up as you are, present, whole. Lust seeks to consume. Real connection seeks to understand. Lust objectifies. Love witnesses. And yes, this takes work. This takes patience. You will fall, you will forget. But every time you return, every time you choose presence over compulsion, you strengthen a different part of yourself, a part that is unshakable. Imagine waking up without that sense of inner conflict. Imagine meeting your desires without being dragged by them. Imagine creating instead of consuming. Imagine the mental space, the clarity, the freedom. That is not a fantasy. It's a direction, a path, a choice that begins now. Because at its root, this journey isn't about resisting lust. It's about realizing you don't need what it offers. What it promises is already within you: connection, aliveness, wholeness. You were never missing those things. You were only looking for them in the wrong places. And when you stop looking outward, you begin to grow inward. You stop grasping. You start becoming. The energy that once leaked through every craving begins to circulate within you, and something shifts. You feel it in your posture, your breath, your presence. You become someone others feel safe around, someone who doesn't need to perform, someone who listens more than they speak, someone who doesn't chase because they are already home. This is the art of transmutation, taking base desires and turning them into something higher. Creativity, purpose, love. Like fire, lust can burn. But when harnessed, it lights the world. It fuels innovation. It births ideas. It becomes devotion. You don't have to be a monk to walk this path. You don't have to be celibate or stoic or perfect. You only have to be honest. You only have to begin. And when you do, you'll notice something unexpected. The world around you shifts. People respond to your calm. Your words carry weight. Your presence deepens. Because you're no longer scattered. You're whole. In part 3, we'll explore the highest form of this transformation. How to turn lust into spiritual energy. How to love without possession. And how to embody presence so fully that nothing outside of you can steal your peace again. The journey continues, and you're not alone in it. We've traveled far already, deeper than the surface, past distraction, into the raw mechanics of mind and desire. But now, we arrive at the most powerful realization of all, that lust, when transmuted, can become the very energy that powers your awakening. This is where we enter sacred ground, where ancient alchemy meets modern insight. And it all begins with a shift in perspective. What if, instead of being something to run from, lust was something to work with? What if the energy behind it, the longing, the hunger, the fire, wasn't the problem, but the invitation? Because here's the truth. The energy of lust and the energy of greatness come from the same source. It's all life force. What matters is not that the energy exists, but what you choose to do with it. You can pour it into fantasy and end the day empty, or you can contain it, refine it, and direct it. And in doing so, become someone who radiates strength, focus, and presence. In Eastern traditions like Tantra and Taoism, this idea is not new. They teach that the energy behind desire is not evil, nor should it be wasted. It is to be honored, cultivated, and elevated. The goal is not to repress, but to raise the vibration of that energy. Through awareness, breath, intention, and stillness, lust becomes not a chain, but a ladder. Tantric practices, for example, don't deny passion, they refine it. They teach you to feel fully, but not to be ruled, to allow energy to rise through the body, not to explode outward, but to expand inward. In this way, desire becomes devotion, sensation becomes sacred, and the act of presence, with yourself, with another, becomes spiritual. This is the deeper mystery. You are not meant to be a slave to your urges. You are meant to harness them, to use them as fuel for focus, for depth, for evolution. When you stop spilling your energy on short-term thrills, it gathers within you. And energy that is gathered becomes power. You see it in those rare individuals who seem calm in chaos, present in temptation, focused while the world spins around them. They're not superhuman. They've just remembered who they are. They've reclaimed their energy. Their presence speaks before they say a word. You feel them when they enter a room. That is not charisma. That is containment. Because most people are leaking, drained, split in every direction. But when you seal those leaks, when you stop chasing what doesn't nourish, you start to glow from within. This is real magnetism, the kind that draws others not because of charm, but because of substance. Now, ask yourself, what would your life look like if you no longer scattered your energy? If you no longer gave your attention away so easily, especially to desires that leave you more empty than full? What could you build? Who could you become? You already have the answer. You've felt glimpses of that version of you. The version that's not clouded by craving. The version that feels clear, still, confident. That version isn't a fantasy. It's you, unburdened. And to reach it, you don't need to become something new. You need to let go of what clouds your clarity. When lust is no longer your master, your relationship with love transforms. Because now, you're not looking for someone to complete you. You're not drawn to bodies or images or illusions. You're drawn to truth, to soul. And when you love from that place, it's not hungry, it's not anxious, it's free. This is the love that heals, the kind that doesn't grasp or possess, the kind that sees, the kind that listens, the kind that exists even in silence. And when two people meet in that space, both present, both whole, there's no addiction, there's reverence. But before you can meet another like that, you have to meet yourself, in all your humanity, in your longing, in your emptiness. You sit with it, you breathe with it, you stop running, and slowly the craving loses its grip. Not because you conquered it by force, but because you finally understood it. You grew past it. You begin to notice that the thing you were always chasing wasn't pleasure, it was presence, it was peace. And now you've found it, not in some fantasy, but in the quiet power of being here. This is the wisdom mystics and monks and saints tried to pass down through cryptic words and sacred texts. That enlightenment is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real, fully human, fully awake, not floating above desire, but walking with it, rooted in choice. St. Augustine wrote about this struggle in his own journey. He knew the pull of lust. He confessed to it, wrestled with it, and through that wrestling, he found something deeper, a love that didn't fade, a joy that didn't demand, a peace that didn't depend on anything outside. That's the kind of joy you find when you overcome lust. Not because you suppress desire, but because you no longer confuse craving with connection. You stop worshiping the illusion. You return to the real. And here's the final insight, perhaps the most profound. Lust is not about sex. It's about escape. It's the refusal to be with what is. Every time you indulge, you're trying to leave the present moment. You're trying to bypass something, a feeling, a fear, a silence. But what if you stayed? What if you remained exactly where you are, without chasing, without escaping, and just breathed? That's where liberation begins. Not in fighting desire, but in being still enough to see it clearly, in recognizing the pattern without identifying with it, in holding yourself gently, even when you stumble. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The present moment is filled with joy. If you are attentive, you will see it." Lust is the opposite of that attentiveness. It pulls you away from now. It promises joy, but delivers longing. But presence, simple, sacred, grounded presence, that's where the real beauty lives, always has been. So to overcome lust is not to become less human. It is to become fully human, to stop being ruled by one part of yourself and instead integrate every part, desire, longing, love, all held in awareness. And in that integration you find your power, not the power to dominate others, but the power to be free, free from compulsion, free from illusion, free from the endless chase that never ends. You see, the one who overcomes lust does not simply overcome temptation. He overcomes the lie that anything outside of him will complete him. He overcomes the distraction that pulls him from purpose. He overcomes the system that profits off his disconnection. He overcomes the world. Because to overcome the world is not to leave it, it's to walk through it awake, to see the illusions but not be fooled, to feel desire but not be mastered, to experience life deeply but not lose yourself in it. This is your invitation, not to shame but to sovereignty, not to resistance but to remembrance. Because the moment you reclaim your energy, the moment you stop leaking, stop chasing, stop escaping, everything changes. Your relationships deepen. Your clarity sharpens. Your mission becomes clear. You stop being reactive and you start being intentional. And what you'll notice is that you begin to create, not just consume. You begin to give, not just take. You begin to show up, grounded, focused, steady, and the world responds. You become a lighthouse in a stormy sea, not perfect, but present. So ask yourself now, what would life feel like if I lived from fullness, not lack? If I woke up each day guided by purpose, not pulled by cravings? Who would I be if I were no longer running? That version of you is not far away. It's already within you. underneath the habits, beneath the noise, waiting. And now, the choice is yours. You can go back, or you can rise. You can keep chasing momentary highs, or you can pursue lasting peace. You can remain split, or you can become whole. This is not a theory, it's a path, and you've already started walking it. So, let this be your moment, not just a video, not just an idea, but a turning point. Let this message live in your bones. Let it guide your attention, your choices, your days. Because when you walk this path, with honesty, with presence, with courage, you don't become less of who you are. You become more, not tamed, not dulled, but awakened. The one who overcomes lust does not become hollow. He becomes free, and freedom is everything. Your journey begins now. Welcome home.